I think the experience of the 20s has shown what a free market could do to agriculture. And if the agricultural economy collapses, then the economy of the rest of the United States sooner or later will collapse. The farmers are the #1 market for the automobile industry of the United States. The automobile industry is the #1 market for steel. So if the farmers' economy continues to decline as sharply as it has in recent years, then I think you would have a recession in the rest of the country. So I think the case for the government intervention is a good one. Secondly, my objection to
President, the only hot war we've got running at the moment is, of course, the one in Vietnam, and we've got our difficulties there, quite obviously.
I don't think that unless a greater effort is made by the government to win popular support, that the war can be won out there. In the final analysis, it's their war. They're the ones who have to win it or lose it. We can help them. We can give them equipment. We can send our men out there as advisors, but they have to win it, the people of Vietnam, against the communists.
The United States, as the world knows, will never start a war. We do not want a war. We do not now expect a war. This generation of Americans has already had enough, more than enough, of war and hate and oppression. We shall be prepared if others wish it. We shall be alert to try to stop it. But we shall also do our part to build a world of peace where the weak are safe and the strong are just. We are not helpless before that task or hopeless of its success. Confident and unafraid, we must labor on, not towards a strategy of annihilation, but towards a strategy of peace.
Assassins' bullets in downtown Dallas. They were riding in an open automobile when the shots were fired. The president, his limp body carried in the arms of his wife Jacqueline, has rushed to Parkland Hospital.
From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. Standard Time, some 38 minutes ago.
It is a rare individual who asks himself, what does history require of me? How is it that I can use this life, limited as it is, to benefit not only future generations, but humanity as a whole? I may be slandered, I may be attacked by my own government, I may be put in jail, I may be shot. But I will endure that. For years, the story of so-called American leaders has been one of missed chances, of failures, and buckling under pressure. Men have become as much crippled by their choice of actions as their decision not to act. And society, not seeing a solution proffered by their chosen leaders, has been enslaved by the blind adherence to those conventional beliefs that would guarantee its destruction.
Well, the thing that struck me in retrospect, because you see, Kennedy represented, it wasn't, everybody asks, why was he killed? Was it for the anti-Vietnam War policy? Was it for what he did to the Federal Reserve, the steel barons? It was all of it, right? Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country, right? And if you remember, the Peace Corps and the kind of overwhelming response Kennedy had gotten from a young generation in the Peace Corps, they literally couldn't keep up with the amount of people who volunteered for the Peace Corps. So it was an unleashing of unbounded optimism, right? And in a sense, that was Kennedy's crime.
In a period of 5 years, the U.S. experienced back-to-back assassinations. John F. Kennedy, who was taken out by the same international assassin ring that had attempted to kill Francis de Gaulle, then Malcolm X, then Martin Luther King, and then Robert Kennedy. Students returning to campuses in 1968 found them flooded with drugs, marijuana, LSD, and other substances to aid in creating mass psychosis. This shift, catalyzed by the CIA and aided significantly by the Congress for Cultural Freedom, fostered the growth of cultural irrationalism, taking the form of political movements like environmentalism, women's liberation, black liberation, and others associated with the New Left, itself an intrinsically fascist movement.
There was 2 successive big sit-ins. The first one I wound up leading along with other people who were working with Lynn at the time. There was Vietnam-related issues, but more especially Columbia University's taking over of a park in Harlem, in effect, to build a gym. The group that I was working in with Lynn was always bringing, or trying anyway, to bring the students to deal with larger issues of life of most people in this country rather than student issues per se. Like because a subtext issue was student deferments, that the students had been able to get out of the draft by being in college. And given the demands of manpower in the Vietnam War, those deferments were being ended. But we couldn't agree with just bringing students to fight for a student privilege. And on the contrary, we looked at the issues of beyond just the gym in Morningside Heights. We looked at the issues of Columbia as a big landlord and a big slumlord in that whole area, which it was. It still is, as far as I know. So we were fighting for issues of, in effect, for issues of life for most people in this country, and bearing on the way that the economy had been increasingly misdirected over the recent decades, which had led to the dollar crises, to the pound and dollar crises. The thing to do would have been to bring that movement outwards, to that kind of movement outwards, to other campuses and other layers of people and students, which is what we began to do, what we attempted to do. We were successful to some extent. The students who had fled out the window of Low Library instead wanted something which is what became the later days of rage at the Democratic Convention in Chicago. Expression of rage and violence. And that's what they did as what was called Hamilton II, a second Columbia sit-in, which had really no purpose but rage and violence. Around this time, they began getting some Ford Foundation funding, or at least by the time after Hamilton II's, they had some Ford Foundation funding. So they had, with that funding, a continuing organization in New York, which had like mini riots in Harlem, set fire to cars, and established itself as the Weatherman later that year, and really led the Chicago Days of Rage business. So, I mean, that's a sketch history. It does, in any case, at least to me, it indicates how that eruption out of really clinical baby boomers crippled the Democratic Party. I mean, the Democratic Party was crippled enough, really, as it was, with Johnson stepping down, Kennedy's assassination, but they threw in the final poison pill with their stuff so that the Democratic constituency was splintered.
With the assassination of the next president, Robert Kennedy, and the counter-revolutionary New Left having fractured and demoralized the traditional base of the Democratic Party, the United States elected the most unlikely and unqualified man for president, Richard Nixon.